10, and we're going to continue our series, Trust. And Henry, if you could put us up in prayer this morning.
Amen, and welcome out to Sunday School this morning. So glad that you've come, joined us here, and we're going to continue on in our series, Trust. And I need some help with some scriptures this morning, so if you'd like to read, you can lift your hand. Jeremy's going to get our main launching scripture, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. Aileen, if you could find for us Ecclesiastes 10, verse 10. Elena, 1 Thessalonians 5:21, Kim Martinez, Proverbs 25:19, and then Victoria, if you could get Luke 16, verse 10, Sylvia, Genesis 41, verse 39 through 41, Leland, actually, hold on, Leland, Colossians 3, verse 23 and 24, Kim Avila, and then Leland, Genesis 39, verse 5, Crusita, Isaiah 54, verse 2 and 3. A few more, 2 Corinthians 10, verse 15 and 16. Juana, Adrian, 2 Timothy 2, verse 2. That will be 2 times, 2 different translations, so please take note of that, Adrian. Proverbs 20, verse 6. A few more here, if you'd like to read Proverbs 20, verse 6. We'll stop right there then for now. Okay, so we've been looking at this series the last number of weeks, last 5 weeks, called Trust. And just by way of introduction and review, we've all heard those words, just trust me. We've probably spoken them ourselves at some point or another. The problem is, as we have found in this study, is that we may not fully understand what the word trust actually means until it's broken. God wired us to trust in life. It's a part of our DNA. Whether we realize it or not, trust is the foundation of life. It is the foundation of relationship with God. But the question is, what is trust? Who can we trust? Who do we trust in life? When should we trust? And then on the alternative side, why can't we trust people? Why can't we sometimes trust ourselves? What do we do when trust has been broken? How do we become people that are trustworthy? Someone that other people can trust? What is needed in us in order that we can be able to trust? This series, as I've mentioned all throughout, it's been inspired by a book I've read called Trust by Dr. Henry Cloud. I encourage you, take a look at that, read it. It's a great book. It applies to so many areas in life. The subtitle of his book is the common theme throughout our series, knowing when to give it, when to withhold it, how to earn it, and how to fix it when it gets broken. So just by some way of review, we began with an overview. We talked about the foundation of trust and looked at what is trust, who can we trust, and then we spoke about how God is the one we can always trust no matter what in life. We spoke at a high level about the 5 elements of trust, and so far, in lessons 2 and 3, we looked at why can't I trust? And then in lesson 4, we began looking at those 5 elements. What are the first 2 elements that we have covered so far? Thinking. What are the first 2 elements of trust that we've looked at? There's 5, and we'll get to all of them eventually. But what are the first 2 that we have looked at? Juana? Understanding? Carlos? Motives. Okay, so the lesson 4 was about understanding and how that is essential. If we're going to be able to trust somebody, they need to know what we're trusting them with, and we need to know that they are fully understanding of what we're trusting them with before we can trust them. Then there's motives, right? If somebody doesn't have your best interests in mind, it's going to be very difficult for you to trust them. But if you know that they have your best interests in mind, it's much easier than to trust them. So today we're going to look at lesson 6. And this is the third essential of trust, and that is ability. So let's get our main launching scripture today, 2 Timothy 2, verse 2.
And the things that you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also.
Okay, the third essential of trust, ability. Let's look firstly this morning at lacking ability. Paul speaks profoundly in our text that we ought to trust in those that are able to be trusted. The word able, it literally has the meaning of ability. It also talks about to be content, or the idea of contentment. But it also has the idea of largeness, right? Of security, of sufficiency, or worthy. If you look up the word ability or able in the dictionary, it means to have sufficient power, skill, or resources to do something. It is the having of freedom or opportunity to do something. It's having an equality or a quality of or nature that makes something possible. In our text, this specifically was speaking to committing specific teachings to those that were also able to teach. Paul was very insistent upon this. This was the way. He knew that the gospel was going to go forth and continue to go forth throughout the world. This was a very key component in discipleship that was needed. He's telling Timothy, look, if you're going to be able to disciple men, that will disciple men, that will disciple men, and on, what you need is to be able to find men that are able not only just to learn, but also to teach others as well. Trusting someone that is actually able or qualified to do something will always have better results. You think about some practical areas of this in life, right? For a potential spouse, you must ask yourself some questions. What is their ability to handle stress? Because how many know in marriage, there will be stress. In life, there's stress, but especially in marriage, you add a wife, you add a husband, you add children into the marriage, you add financial problems, health problems. There's going to be stress in life. So the question is, for a potential spouse, and you're watching them, are they able to handle stress? How do they handle stress? Right? How do they handle failure? How do they handle correction? Do they have the ability to make money? That might be a good thing for a wife that is considering it, who they're going to marry as a husband, because once you have children, it would be great for you to not have to work. But that's going to be very difficult if your husband doesn't have the ability to make money or to go find a job, to keep a job, right? Do they have the ability to be faithful to you? Are they able to keep track of their money? It might not be a bad idea to, if you're starting to get to know somebody, just asking them simple questions. Are you on a budget? If the answer is no, maybe you ought to ask why at minimum, right? And encourage them to start getting on a budget, because life on a budget compared to life not on a budget, it's actually going to be a revealing of their heart ultimately. Are they able to save money, or do they spend every single dollar that comes into their hands? All right. Are they able to treat people nicely? Do they treat your mother nicely? Do they treat your father nicely? Right? Are they able to forgive? Right? When somebody hurts them in life, are they able to forgive? These are abilities that a spouse should have. These are abilities you should look for in a potential spouse. In child raising, right? Many times I've seen through the years, Parents that begin to trust their children, but they're not actually able to be trusted in areas yet. They don't have abilities yet, right? Do they have the ability to do what you're asking them to do? Do they have the ability to follow through? Have you taught them how to make their bed while you're expecting them to make their bed? It might be helpful for you to show them at least once or twice, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or a dozen times until they finally have the ability. And then do they have the ability to stay on task, to follow through on what you've assigned them to do as their chores? Do they have the ability to clean their own room? Do they have the ability to change their own clothes? Do they have the ability to wipe their own butt? Do they have the ability to do their own homework? Right? These are areas that it's like, well, those are common sense, Pastor, but maybe not. Maybe you're expecting them to do something that you've never taught them how to do, right? You've never given them, going back to that first essential of trust, that understanding, right? Understanding can quickly turn into ability if you give them the proper training, right? They can gain the ability to do some of those things, but how can you trust them if they've never learned how to do it? On the job, do you have the training necessary to do the job you've been asked to do so that you have the right abilities? Do you have the ability to be flexible? Do you have the ability to stay on task? Do you have the ability to follow directions? Do you have the ability to take initiative? Do you have the ability to work while the boss is away? Or do you always need someone there watching over your shoulder? Abilities. In ministry, do you have the ability to perform your ministry? Have you been taught what is necessary to do your ministry? Has God given you abilities and talents? In discipleship, do you have the ability to ask questions, to learn and to follow? Do you have the ability to follow directions? Do you have the ability to pay attention? Do you have the ability to teach others what you have been taught? I can remember in Prescott, right? Discipleship was more than just the pastor's job. Discipleship was actually everyone's job. We were all in some capacity discipling each other. I can remember Pastor Nate Rush and I, we would challenge each other on different things. Hey, why did you do that? Hey, when you said this, when you were preaching that altar call, yeah, maybe next time don't say that. Hey, you went a little long, or hey, you should have maybe pulled a little harder in that altar call. Right? We were helping disciple each other. Right? In launching churches, do you have the ability to give? Do you have the ability to sacrifice? Do you have the ability to leave that which is comfortable and go to another city, another nation? Do you have the ability to be trusted with money that is not your own? Do you have the ability to manage finances? Do you have the ability to manage follow-up on your own? Do you have the ability to preach? Do you have the ability to be flexible? Do you have the ability to work with someone or work without someone watching over your shoulder week in, week out, faithfully? The problem is many times the reason we're struggling to trust people is that they don't have abilities. Why? Why would someone trust somebody that doesn't actually have the ability needed to perform the task they're trying to perform? Sometimes, number one, because it's very practical, things need to be done, don't they? And so many times, because things need to be done, somebody has to do the job, right? We have to marry someone, anyone. We don't have time maybe to do it ourselves. Someone has to run the ministry. Someone has to be taught and discipled. Someone has to be sent out. And so what happens is that if we're not careful, because things need to be done, we simply trust without the person actually having the ability. Ecclesiastes 10, verse 10.
If the axe is dull and one does not sharpen the edge, then he must use more strength, but wisdom brings success.
Okay, so here's Solomon. He's writing, he's talking just very practical wisdom. If the axe is dull, one doesn't sharpen the edge, you're going to have to use more strength. In other words, if somebody is lacking ability in life, it's going to be harder for them. Not only is it going to be harder for them, it's going to be harder for everyone else around them, right? It's going to be harder for the person that is relying upon them. Just because someone is doing a task doesn't mean they're being efficient, doesn't mean they're qualified to do it, and it doesn't mean that they're being successful at it. Things need to be done. That's one of the reasons why oftentimes we trust people that don't have ability. Number two, maybe we're not finding anyone else that is able or qualified. Maybe we have looked a while for a spouse, and we're like, well, he doesn't have any ability to be my spouse, but I guess he'll do. Or she, right? Or maybe we've looked a while for a worker or a business owner or a manager, and we're going through all the resumes, and we're like, man, there is not a single candidate in this that has the ability to perform the task that we're asking them to do. But again, going back to number one, things need to be done. So I guess we'll have to trust this person. Maybe it's a ministry member, a disciple, or launching someone, right? But after not finding anyone able or qualified, if we're not careful, we can settle for someone that is not. Thirdly, it could be simply relationship bias. This is commonly seen in family-owned businesses, isn't it? Right? A son or a daughter of the owner of the company oftentimes is put into a position of leadership that did not earn it by any way, shape, or form. They lack the training. They lack the knowledge. They simply lack the ability to perform the tasks that had been put in their hands. But what is their only qualification? Their family. And so because of that, they don't have the ability, but they are put into sometimes positions of leadership. Right? I've seen it through the years in different companies where this happens, and it's only a matter of time before the company begins to have these divisions, like literal divisions, where the company begins to crack and crumble. Why? Because they're relying on people that aren't actually qualified. In a small town, being family isn't the only qualification, is it? Sometimes it's, and we all know the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And that is so true, right? In a small town, Atlanta, right? On one of my son's baseball teams, a young man was chosen to play a certain position simply because of who his dad was. Because he had some money, he had some pull with the coach. His kid was okay, but he wasn't the greatest, I'll tell you that. He did not deserve to play every single game the same position, but he did. He was also chosen for All-Stars, not based on his ability, but because of who his dad was, and he happened to be the only 12-year-old on the team. And so they made an excuse. Well, the reason why he's no, it was because of who his dad was. All right. Spouses can be chosen based on the recommendation of someone else, rather than actually seeing their ability. In the third world, we just got back from Nepal. This works out in literal arranged marriages. Right? I know we don't necessarily do that 100% here in America, but I don't know specifically how it works out here in Española. But I remember in Prescott, there would be parents of one in the church that would talk to the other parents. They were good friends, and so they would always happen to introduce their son or daughter to the other son or daughter. Hey, why don't you talk with each other? Okay, let's go in the other room, right? Right? But how many know that just because somebody says somebody else is a good candidate for somebody to marry, that doesn't mean that they are, right? You got to go in with your eyes open to a relationship. Here in America, blind dates are set up, right? There's Tinder, there's IneedAwife.com. I don't know what, I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's actually one or not, but I didn't want to name off all the other ones because I don't want you looking them up, right? But in the church world, right, ministry leaders are often chosen by how much they give to the church. They try to hold on to people so that they won't leave. Head disciples are often family, friends, people that brown nose to the pastor. Right? Many times, though, the problem is when they're trusted, they have no character. They have no ability to do what they've been asked to do. Finally, the reason why simply could be because of a lack of thought. Sometimes we don't think through who we are choosing to trust. Maybe we simply don't ask some of the questions I just helped you to ask. Right? The Bible tells us if we're going to trust in something, we ought to test all things. 1 Thessalonians 5:21.
Test all things, hold fast what is good.
Okay, so test all things. If you look that up in the Greek, it means test all things. Very simply. So if you're going to test all things, you've got to ask those questions. Right? You've got to dig a little bit under the surface. Right? You've got to prod. Okay, so before I trust you to do something, let's talk about it. All right, let's see. Do you have the abilities that are needed for this job, this ministry, to be my husband or wife? But many times, if we're not careful, we rush into trusting someone without ever asking if they have the ability needed to be trusted. So what are the results then of trusting someone that has not shown or proven their abilities? Number one, it will always lead to frustration. If you've ever trusted someone that did not have the ability to do what you've asked them to do, eventually you're going to be frustrated, right? Because you're expecting this and they're producing down here in life. And you're like, man, why did I ask them to do that? Right? To Proverbs 25:19.
Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth and a foot out of joint.
Confidence in an unfaithful man, it says in time of trouble, it's like a bad tooth, right? It's like a foot out of joint. In other words, it is frustrating and it is painful, right? There will be difficult times in life that come up, right? There'll be difficult times in work. There'll be difficult times in relationships in family, right? There's going to be difficult times in ministry, in education, whatever part of life that you're dealing with. And if you have chosen to trust a person in one of those relationships that lacks abilities, you're going to be frustrated in those difficult times. In easy times, everything's great, right? There's no frustrations. It's like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm so happy I have a relationship with this person. But then when the difficult times come and you really have to rely upon them and the foot goes out of joint, oh, man, ooh, that was painful. That was frustrating, right? You'll be frustrated. They'll be frustrated. Everyone connected to them will be frustrated. There will be frustration. Secondly, what we find is that there will be brokenness. Hearts are broken. Marriages can be broken. Families can be broken. Businesses literally go broke when they trust in people that don't have abilities. Broken discipleship, broken churches. It can lead ultimately to broken trust issues. Right? Maybe you think, after trusting someone that didn't have the ability to be trusted, right? You think, oh, I trusted someone that said they could do something in the past and they weren't actually able to do it. So how do I know that I can trust you? Right? They're bringing those past sunburns into the present. Right? They've been burned in the past by someone that they thought was trustworthy, and now they're wondering, am I able to trust this current person? I can remember I ran a business in Prescott. I would often come across potential clients that had been burned in the past. It was a digital marketing company, and in dealing with them, many times They were very rough up front. They were, very rude, almost on the edge of being disrespectful towards me. And I'm like, this is my first call I've ever had with you. I don't know you. You don't know me. You don't know my ability to help you as a company. And yet there's like this frustration. And so as I would dig a little bit below the surface, I would find out what had happened is they had trusted a different digital marketing company before, and they had been burned. They had said, oh, this is what we're going to do for you. We're going to produce X amount of dollars for your company. And they produced nothing. They got them to sign a contract, and then they produced nothing. And so now they're talking to me. They've never met me before, but their reference point of digital marketing was liars, people that they couldn't trust, people that didn't have the ability to produce, that burned them thousands of dollars sometimes in the past. And now here I am. I'm just like, hey, I want to help you, right? But they're struggling to trust me because of someone's failure of ability in the past. Thirdly, there can be lack of excellence. Things may get done, but there can be a lack of excellence simply due to ignorance, right? Many times we don't know the abilities we ought to have. We haven't learned the abilities we need for the task that we're being trusted with. So there can be a lack of excellence. Okay, let's open up. Any questions talking about lacking ability before we move on? Jeremy? Yeah, it goes back to asking questions, right? Why are you funky? Right? Just, sometimes you got to be very direct with people, right? Call them out on it, right? Hey, why are you getting funky? Other times it's being gracious with people. Sometimes people get in a funk, but then they also have the ability to get out of the funk, right? Sometimes you don't have to deal with every single little funky attitude. Like in a church of our size, no doubt this morning, I would imagine there might be someone here that has a funky attitude. I don't know, right? If I dealt with every person that walked through the doors that had a funky attitude, imagine what would that make everyone feel like? Like, man, pastor hates me, right? But you know what? I am well aware that funky attitudes come and funky attitudes go, right? Sometimes you're just going through a funk, right? It's like, you know what? It's okay. Next service, you might be completely different, right? Sometimes they had a bad day. Sometimes they've got gas, right? Funny story. I was in Nepal and it was one of those times where the translation, it came through very cut and dry, and I had to hold myself back. So I'm talking with a lady, and she's explaining what she's got, some stomach problems, and I'm asking, and the translator's asking, we're going back and forth. And so finally he turns to me and he says, she has gas. I almost lost it just like you did. And I'm telling you, I had to, oh, okay. But reality is, maybe that's why somebody's in a funk. Maybe they've got gas. Maybe that's why they're not smiling, or maybe that's why they're smiling, right? Reality is funky attitudes come and go, right? So you work with people. If the funky attitude's not going, maybe it's prolonged gas, right? Then maybe you confront it and you say, hey, what's going on? Let's talk, right? Is something wrong? Did I do something to offend you? It goes back to those difficult conversations, right? Those elephants in the room that you bring it up, and then maybe they're like, oh no, there's nothing, I'm good. Oh, okay. All right. And maybe it is something that they're just not wanting to say yet, or maybe it's really nothing. Maybe they're just growing through some things, right? And so, but yeah, if you notice that there's a funky attitude, those are some of the things that I've personally learned is you don't have to deal with everything in the moment that it happens, right? Sometimes you can let things play out. Right. Absolutely. Right. So if they have the ability to be trusted, right, you've seen it demonstrated. It's like, no, I know they can be trusted. Maybe they're just going through a funk right now. Like, that's not going to change my trust in them. Right. It's like, no, I still trust them. Now, if they damage the trust, then or they break the trust, they show that they can't be trustworthy, then that's another story, right? Then that's when we go back to, okay, how can we fix this, right? How can we fix what's been broken, right? Because yeah, if you're going to have continued trust, if the trust is going to continue to grow in the relationship, there must be demonstration, right? There must be continued demonstration of understanding. There must be continued demonstration of motives, and there must be continued demonstration of growing abilities in that trust. So yeah, I think it's definitely connected. Yep. Very good. Good question. Kim? Yep. Mm, yep. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. It's why people get hired in a small town. It's why people get put in government in a small town many times, right? It's not necessarily that they're the most qualified candidate. It's who they know. It's who their family is, right? Yep, very good. But many times they lack ability, and look how it plays out, right? It doesn't play out well. Things get broken and damaged. Very good. Any other questions or comments? Lacking ability. So, mm, mm, yep, yep. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we're squeezing people into a mold. I like that. Yeah, sometimes we're asking them to do something they sometimes they don't want to do, right? But sometimes they don't have the ability to do, and it scares them. But what I've learned is if you give them the tools to be the what you're asking them to do, right? They're much more at ease to do it, right? And then number two, they're much more confident to do it. And number three, those that are underneath them, thank you for it. Thank you for giving them the tools to be the leader that you've asked them to be, right? Because there's times that I've been asked to do things that I'm like, I don't have the qualifications for that. But the qualifications were then put into me, right? I was trained on certain things. I can remember when I started working at Jack in the Box a long time ago, and I was probably 21. And the day I got hired, my boss told me that his plan for me was to become a shift leader. But he didn't make me a shift leader that day, right? He started training me how to become a shift leader, how to count drawers, right? How to handle food safety, right? How to manage a team and put people in the right positions so that whenever the busy rush time of the day came, things ran smoothly, right? And so when the time came for me to actually be the shift leader, I was confident. Okay, yeah, I can do this, right? And it's the same. It's in discipleship, right? We don't launch a guy out the day he comes and tells me, "Hey, Pastor, I feel called to preach." That's great. I'm going to be praying for you because I know troubles are going to come now, right? Now that you've gone on record, hey, I want to preach, there's going to be hell that fights against a man's life. I guarantee it, right? But number two, I'm also going to begin to work with you. I'm going to begin to train you, give you the tools that are necessary. I'm going to teach you how to preach. I'm going to teach you how to work with people. I'm going to teach you how to evangelize. I'm going to teach you how to study, how to put sermons together, right? All those things. Why? Because I'm giving them the tools needed to be successful. Very good, though. I appreciate that comment. Any other questions? Yep. 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 Yeah, and that would be an educated risk, though, right? We're looking at ability. So if I were to take a risk and completely, well, I don't know if they're able, but let's take a risk, that would be a foolish risk, right? But if you see, like, no, they have the ability to work with people, they have the ability to preach, they have the ability to do the things, like, absolutely, I have no problem taking a risk if maybe they don't have every single box checked, right? It's like, no, there is the unknown factor, right? That sometimes it's like, you know what, you may not have every single box checked, but I can remember my pastor, there'd be men that he would send out that the rest of us were like, wow, if he's sending him out, then there's hope for the rest of us. Right? It's like, man, okay, God, you can help. And then we'd see the hand of God, right? The hand of God would move on their lives, right? People saved, disciples raised up. Some of those men that I just mentioned, they're now missionaries. And I'm like, wow, okay, there's hope for the rest of us. Very good. Isaac, you had a hand up? Absolutely. That actually is a great segue into our second point. So let's get into our second point. I really appreciate the comment. Let's look secondly at gaining ability. Okay. The answer to lacking ability would be then to gain ability. You need to gain the abilities needed to perform the task you have been trusted with. So, how can ability be gained? Number one, teachability. You must have the ability to learn from someone else a skill or ability. In being teachable, you must have the skill and the ability to ask questions, ask the right questions. How can I learn from this person? How can I learn from their past failures? How can I learn from their past successes? How can I learn from what they've done in life and apply it to my life? Teachability. Number two, there must be availability. I've often heard that the greatest life or the greatest ability in life is availability, right? If you're simply, you make yourself available. I'll be here, I'll be there, right? I'm going to be open to the times and whatnot. There is availability. Thirdly, there is commitment, right? You must commit to the task at hand. If you're going to do anything in life, if you're going to gain ability, you've got to commit to it. Right? If you're going to trust somebody else to have the abilities that are needed to be trusted, right? You've got to commit to it, right? Paul, in our text, he talks about this, right? He mentions, he says, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also, right? You've got to commit to the task, right? Discipleship is something that must be committed to. It cannot be a half-hearted commitment. There must be a commitment if you're going to gain the abilities you need. Time, right? How many know ability is not gained overnight, right? You've got to take the time to learn, the time to be taught. Practice. How does one get to Carnegie Hall? The old saying is practice, practice, practice. Right? If you're going to do anything well in life, if you're going to gain any ability, whether that's in your work, whether that's in your family life, in your ministry, you've got to practice. Experience, right? practice is only enough, but you've got to get in the game, right? You've got to have experience, right? There are NBA and NFL players that they've never played one single game in their career. They're on the third, fourth string, right? They might have played 1 minute their entire career and been in the NBA for 3 or 4 years, right? They're not going to have the experience that LeBron James has, right? They're not going to have the experience of Steph Curry that's been in game after game after game of their career in the playoffs, right? If you're relying on somebody that has never had playoff experience compared to, let's say, the Lakers or the Warriors or, you know, one of these teams that have been in the playoffs year after year after year, it's going to be harder to trust that they're going to do well in the crunch time than it is. It's like, you know what? No. LeBron James may have had a terrible year, the entire year, but come playoff times, right? Sometimes he comes to life. Sometimes. Not the last few years. All right? Steph Curry. Who would you trust more, Steph Curry or Jordan Poole? Right? In the playoffs, you're going to trust Steph Curry because he's the man. He's the man. He's going to shoot lights out when it matters, right? There's Jimmy Butler playoff, playoff Jimmy, or whatever they call him, right? It's like, okay, the reason for that is because they have experience, right? The things we go through in life can enlarge our abilities. They test our abilities. Once you learn something, you've got to put boots on the ground. You've got to actually gain experience. This is why students out of college, although they may have a lot of head knowledge, they need experience if they're going to continue to grow in their abilities. Many times, bosses are even looking for experience more than a college degree. Why? Because they want somebody that doesn't just have head knowledge about how to weld, right? I can remember years ago working a job at a company called Superior. We would make these massive conveyors used in mines, aggregate systems and whatnot. And many times the welders that we had come in, they would come in from a different company. And it wasn't because they necessarily had head knowledge or certificates, although we did look at that. We wanted to know, can you weld? So what would we do? We'd put them on the line, on the weld line, and see, can they weld? If they could weld, it's like, okay, there's no beads, there's no holes, right? Okay, they can be trusted with the job. What are the results then of gaining ability that we see in our text? Number one, when you gain ability, you can be trusted with more. Luke 16, verse 10.
He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and he who is unjust in what is least is also unjust in much.
When you demonstrate your skills and abilities, people will naturally want to trust you more. More work, more responsibility, more influence, and naturally with more money. Joseph, right? Genesis 41, we find him being trusted with more. Genesis 41, 39 through 41.
Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you."
Okay, so here Joseph goes from being a slave and then being a prisoner, the lowest part of society, to in one day he is elevated to the prime minister of Egypt, right? There is something about when he demonstrated his ability, right? His wisdom, he's elevated and raised up. When we gain abilities in life, God will trust us with more. Colossians 3, 23 and 24.
And whatever you do, do it heartedly as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ.
Okay, so when we gain abilities in life, God trusts us with more. Secondly, what we see is other people are blessed. Marriages and homes are blessed when you have greater abilities, right? Businesses are blessed when the workers continue to grow in their abilities to bless the business. Ministries are blessed when people are diligent. I want to get better at my ministry. I don't want to just plateau. I want to grow in my ministry. Disciples are blessed. Converts are blessed. Churches are blessed. One day cities are blessed. Nations are blessed. Going back to Joseph, God blessed other people through his life. Genesis 39, verse 5.
So it was from the time that he had made him overseer of his house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field.
Okay, so here we find the Lord bless the Egyptian's house. Why? For Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all. Why? Again, for Joseph's sake, right? Because there was something in him. Other people were blessed because of the abilities that he gained. Thirdly, there is enlargement. The greater amount that you can be trusted with, the more you will enlarge as a person and as a leader. Isaiah 54, 2 and 3.
Enlarge your house, build an addition, spread out your home, and spare no expense, for you will soon be bursting at the seams. Your descendants will occupy other nations and resettle the ruined cities.
Okay, so here, enlarge the place of your tent, let them stretch out, right? So there's this enlargement that comes, right? And what's interesting is that there's enlargement that comes through our lives. The greater amount of things that you are able to trust other people with, the more you'll be able to enlarge. As a father, as a husband, as a wife, or as a mother, as a disciple, as a ministry leader, a spiritual leader, a pastor, the more that personally I delegate to trustworthy people, the more I am able to take on of larger things that are able to help others as well. Right? You think about, I can remember Pastor Tim, whenever I first came to Española, I asked him very simply, I said, what are things that you are currently doing? Ministries, I want to make sure that I'm filling in the gaps as much as I can. I don't want people to be like, oh, well, Pastor Tim used to do this, and why aren't you doing it? Right? And so I wanted to know, like, what are some practical things? He said, Devon, is very simple. I preach, I teach, I pray, and I counsel, and I come to church. I said, okay, and like, are you in a rap group? Are you doing this? And he's like, no. He said, I do those things, and I delegate other things to other people. That is how the church is going to grow. Right? What is the will of God? It is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. Right? The pastor's job, that is the pastor's job. Right? Is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. Right? And so I remember thinking, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do that to the best of my ability. Right? The greater amount of things that you can trust to other people, the more that you'll be able to enlarge. There will be enlargement of influence in the kingdom of God when we teach and we disciple other people. 2 Corinthians 10, verse 15 and 16.
As your faith is increased, we shall be greatly enlarged by you in our sphere to preach the gospel in the regions beyond you.
I remember once hearing my pastor say something along these lines about the founder of our fellowship, Pastor Wayman Mitchell. This was after he passed away. He said, although Pastor Wayman Mitchell passed away, he still preaches around the world every Sunday and every Wednesday. Why? Because he taught faithful men who were able to teach other faithful men, who were able to teach other faithful men, and so on. Right? As we trust in people that have the ability to be trusted, there is enlargement in the kingdom of God, not only just on a personal level, not only on a local level, but on an international level as well. So let's look finally, then we'll open up at stewarding ability. Our text tells us that there is a connection between trust and ability. Let's read our scripture again, 2 Timothy 2, verse 2 in the ESV.
And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to you, faithful men, who will be able to teach others also.
Okay, in this translation, it says, entrust to faithful men. Let's read it now in the NIV.
And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others.
Okay, so here it puts it a little differently. It replaces faithfulness for reliable people. And then it replaces the ability to simply be qualified, right? When you choose to trust someone with something, or they choose to trust you, you may have the ability to do or perform the task. You may have the talent, the qualifications, but there is a characteristic that is needed if you're going to be able to trust someone with that ability. What is the characteristic needed to trust and to connect it with ability? It is a word called faithfulness. 1 Corinthians 4 verse 2 says, moreover, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. There must be faithfulness and commitment to the task. Proverbs 20 verse 6 says, most men will proclaim each his own goodness, but who can find a faithful man? Anybody can fill out a resume, right? Anybody can possess abilities, but can you be faithful to the task you've been entrusted with? Raw talent is not enough. There needs to be a development of abilities in life. Why do we have 3 services a week and a Sunday school? Why do we have serious men class? Why do we have revivals, conferences, pioneer rallies, men's discipleship classes? Why? To develop our abilities and increase our faithfulness and commitment to the task at hand. Anything good in life, how many know it takes hard work? Marriage takes hard work. Your job is going to take hard work. Sports, if you're going to increase your abilities in sports, it's going to take hard work. Raising children takes hard work. Evangelism takes hard work. Discipleship, church planting, world evangelism, it takes hard work, and there must be faithfulness and commitment to the task. Number 2, there must be faithfulness in stewarding the ability you have been given. Think about the parable of the talents, men that were given resources as a test of their faithfulness. Right? Those that were faithful, you can read it for yourself when you have the time, Matthew 24, 14 through 17. Those that were faithful with their talents stewarded them well. They increased what they had been given. Ask yourself this morning, have you been faithful with the abilities and talents that God has given you? Thirdly, there must be faithfulness to teach others what you have been taught. Our text tells us it is not enough to simply have ability, to be trusted, and then to stop the flow. No, we must be faithful to teach others also. Our children, our spouses, our coworkers, our students, our converts, our disciples, our brothers and sisters. We must teach them. 2 Timothy 2 verse 2, and I close. In the Amplified, it says it this way. And the instructions which you have heard from me along with many witnesses, transmit and entrust as a deposit to reliable and faithful men who will be competent and qualified to teach others also. Okay, very good. We're out of time this morning. Thank you for coming to Sunday school. We'll pick this up again next week. God bless you.